Well, it is Sunday, May 19th. We are having yet another day indoors, even though it's beautiful outside. Actually, one of us is outside right now, and maybe we'll hear from him. We'll get the outside weather report later on. Um, I have a bunch of things to share with y'all. We've got a couple of folks who haven't joined us in a while. I saw Jim March, who said he was going to join us. And I think Mark M has been with us before. So, and I know if Ryan goes indoors, he probably will have an update for us on his project to write a program that will convert a program on tape for the ZX81 / TS-1000 into a file that can be put on a ROM that works in a TS-1510 cartridge unit or replica of that. Brian mentioned the other day that he's been working on that and making some progress. And beyond that, oh, Adam, you didn't ask the important question.
Is it recording?
No. Did I turn on screen
Did a
share for
share screen
everyone?
sharing? Thank you. I'm sort of doing two things at once here. So
Right, multitasking. Okay, so a long time ago, we were talking about things that we thought would be a good idea to do for the future in terms of meetings and whatever. And one of those things that we talked about was a sort of special interest group, just real in-person, user groups would do. And for about a little over a year now, I think, Ricardo and Gustavo and Tim Horner and I and Jeff, who's not here, Burrell, have been meeting on Wednesday nights, every Wednesday night, almost. And it started out as helping Ricardo and Gustavo get the TS-Pico up to release ready status. And then Jeff and Tim joined us to help with the hardware challenges, and Joe recently joined a few weeks back to help with some cool 3D stuff, and Ryan joined a few weeks back to help with some user interface software, and he has this really cool idea for um, tools to help people who want to develop programs for the 2068, and if they want to use it, if they want to do the development on the 2068 or on a a PC or Mac or whatever, and then have a way of communicating back and forth without constantly pulling out the SD card. So all of which is to say that we somehow backed our way into having a hardware SIG meeting. And if that is your jam, I think in a few weeks I'll open it up for folks who want to come and talk about their own hardware SIGgy things. Um,
could you give
so
an example, David, of what you would expect other people to talk about if we joined?
yeah, right. So well, and you remember we've talked. Jeff has talked a bunch about his desire to develop a video solution for the 2068, and he was doing it with a FPGA for a long time. And when he joined to help out with the TS-Pico thing, he started talking about his project within those meetings as well, and we suggested that he try the Pico, and that's what led to his Pico video board. I have a couple things that I'm working on, one of which is a little circuit board that emulates the General Instruments SPO-256 speech synthesizer chip, which you may remember that you could get at Radio Shack at one point in the 1980s.
Is that the one that was in the TI Speak and Spell?
No, that was TI's own chip.
Hmm.
It's the SPO-256. A version was used in the Intellivision speech
Their speech
module.
synthesizer? Yeah, so it would go Space Spartans.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
only less legible,
Yeah.
less understandable. I don't remember who else made a device, but it was somewhat popular. The two sort of big ones that were easy to get were the General Instruments one and then the Votrax SCO1, which was expensive. It's like 69 bucks way back in the day. So I'm working on that. And I'm using, surprise, surprise, a Pico to do it because the Pico is $2 and the SPO chip is impossible to find these days. And also, somebody posted to the groups.io list a while back a schematic that emulates the 2050 modem. So it has the Intel UART chip at the right addresses, the same address, the same port addresses as the 2050 modem, but it doesn't have the modem chip. It just does serial. And so I took that design and made a little circuit board and I'm piping it out to this Wi-Fi modem thing that somebody else designed that accepts Hayes, AT commands. And so my goal there is to be able to attach, to use existing 2068 terminal software with this Wi-Fi modem, basically. So if you're building something, if you want to listen in on people talking about crazy building things, this will be the place. Fly on
And
the
what time is
wall.
that?
Wednesday nights right now. Wednesday nights. I gotta remember. It's 7 to 9 Eastern.
Eastern. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, because I accidentally joined that one with Ryan one day when
Yeah.
I was having some trouble with the Pico, and you're like, "We're having a meeting in like 10 minutes. Why don't you join us?" So,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
Exactly. Right. And we helped you troubleshoot.
right.
I mean, that's part of
Yeah,
the. It
yeah,
was part of the goal of that
yeah.
was helping you, solve the challenges that you were having. So it's it's all the same people y'all hang out with here, um, except on a Wednesday night. Okay, so updates on the TS-Pico, working on improving the software. Our goal is to have a firmware release available mid-summer, and this would be a thing that you can upgrade in place because of the way the um, just because of the way the Pico works. You just plug it into your PC and download a specific file, and there might be a couple other files that need to be uploaded, but the process is not terribly painful. Some folks will need an upgraded flash ROM, just because the the Pico, the 2068 cannot overwrite its own ROM while it's being used. So there's like two slots in the TS-Pico flash ROM that are sort of either you can view them as protected or impossible to write to from the 2068. And I have a list. I know exactly who needs one. I know who has what ROM, and I have stocked up for that moment when that moment comes. I've already sent some of you. If you purchased a PicoVideo board, and I knew you needed the ROM upgrade, I sent you the ROM upgrade with that. So the other thing related to
Well, I have a question about that video board.
yeah,
So apparently, I have like one of the original ones, and
with
so
the
it's like the
FPGA.
hardware is outdated, like itself. I don't know if I need a ROM or if I need an actual hardware update. In
mean,
this meeting a while back, I was told it's just totally outdated. I was like, oh.
I think what you have is one of Jeff's FPGA versions.
Yeah.
Okay. And it's not outdated per se, except that it's not what everybody else is using.
Okay.
It works just fine. I have one of
Yeah,
those.
it still works.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's good. It's just it would have been a very expensive board to build. The FPGA itself is like $12 now
I see.
versus $2 for the Pico chip. um, so one of the cool things that Joe has been working on is 3D printed cases for the TS-Pico and the PicoVideo. And Joe has a filament printer, and so when you look at something that I'm just going to try to switch cameras here. When you look at um, when you look at one of the things that Joe has made, you can sort of see the filament. Still looks absolutely fantastic. I got to turn off my. Okay, let's move this forward a little bit so I can. There we go. All right, so this is the one for the TS-Pico, and it's a 2-piece, and you can probably see those little diagonal lines. That's the filament, and it takes Joe's printer a while to make this, as you might expect. So he's also made a version of this for the oh, I'm sorry, that's the PicoVideo one because it doesn't have buttons. Here's the one with the buttons. This one's for the TS-Pico. And if you have a TS-Pico board, you know that there are these 3 buttons on the right-hand side. He left a little carve out here for a sticker that we somehow have to figure out how to make. Nice little slot for the SD card and a little opening for the Pico chip, so you can just plug your cord into there.
Dave,
Yep.
I want to make a clarification. That's a redo
Yeah,
of
that's
one that was already posted, so
yeah
I can't take full credit for that. So.
right, and it was John, whose last name escapes me now. That's probably not his real last name.
Yeah, I can't think of it either. I was going to say something, but yeah, that's
right. So you took
before.
John's work and did some refinements to it, especially with those buttons. And so Joe has been sending me these things, and I sent one of them off to this company called JLPCB, and one of the things that they do is 3D printing, and I got it done in resin printing, which is means it's sort of a solid plastic. And if you look super close, you can sort of see some pattern here. I think it's from the slicer or something. It's really difficult to see. So this design is Joe's doing a few more refinements. Is that right, Joe?
Yeah, what I want to end up doing is making both of them 20 millimeters thick.
Okay.
So they can fit in a slot in the expansion board.
Yep.
And also have room to make a case around the expansion board. So it'll all be, no bare boards, basically.
Yep. And so to answer Adam's question, dirt cheap. I mean, it comes in white, and so if you want, if you want it silver, it has to be spray painted. But dirt cheap. So by the way, here's another project that Joe and I are working on, and so this is the original white, and then this is spray painted with some silver. It's only a single coat. It's kind of hard to tell that it's not super. It's not super. It's a little bit translucent, so it needs a second coat. And I already have the circuit board for this, and this will be a thing that will hold 8 16K images. Yeah, 8 16K ROM images all in one cartridge. And this is an adaptation of another design, a design originally done for the TC 2068, the Portuguese 2068, and it had a higher, I don't know what you would call this part, but this part here had a higher profile, and Joe managed to slim it down, move it down. This square hole is for a rotary switch, and then this little rectangular hole is for a tiny read write switch. So you'll be able to put 8 images on a little ROM chip and plug it into the 2068 and have a go at it. So these are the kinds of things we're working on that.
Paul has a question.
Paul has a question.
I
I'm
have
sorry.
a question.
Yeah.
Until someone gets the case, is there a conformal coating applied to the boards after they're done?
Nope.
Because this card, this is the way they were in service.
Yeah.
So the conformal coating that's on the chip part,
Hang on.
that's
I'm
still
gonna
very
spotlight you.
pliable and protected and in place after a minimum of 50 years.
Can you show us that again? Because
Yeah,
it was hard to see.
and hold it in front of your. Yeah.
Let's see if I can get it in focus.
Right.
Good luck.
Now,
Challenge
that's
of-
the whole board. This is to pull it out the slot tab. I'll change the backdrop again to show the main board. But
Okay.
these are just two regular ICs.
Okay.
But the bulk of the work is all done over here.
Okay.
And that has a clear conformal coating that's still rubbery
Mm-hmm.
after 50 years.
And doesn't that sort of affect your ability to do rework if you need to unsolder something and replace it?
That went to somebody, they went to a replacement repair facility.
Yeah.
When I was dealing with these were swap outs
Right.
because
And
we had to get the equipment back up in service.
Right. And you were working in the field, right? And
Yes.
these things were installed in various. I mean,
Well, anything that was in the building, basically.
okay. Okay.
But I'll change the back screen so you can get a closer view of the main, this is all one ceramic chip
That's craziness. Yeah.
with all the sub chips before they could miniaturize it anymore.
Yeah. Yeah.
But they rushed it into service, and Western Electric did the manufacturing back then.
So I don't. That's kind of a mixed bag in the synthesizer community. There were companies that did that would coat the parts, as it were, and it just made life really difficult for folks, as it turned out, about 45 50 years down the road, who wanted to reproduce.
Well, yeah.
So
No,
yeah.
I'm confused there. Did they cover it like with an epoxy to make it so you couldn't see the chips, or was it done for protection?
It was
Largely
done
covering
for
the chip.
protection because we handled the cards,
I
in the
see.
field. And it's on a metal backplate.
Right.
This is a memory board, or what kind of board is this?
Predominantly a controller board.
Ah, okay. But if you have the circuit, the electric circuit, you can emulate the operation of the board. You don't need the content, just only need the specs for the connector and also the rest of the equipment.
Yeah, no, he just has this thing as an example of stuff that he did a long time ago. But Paul, I don't think that. I mean, unless it's going to go into a certain kind of environment, I don't think that the vast majority of electronics is conformally coded. I mean,
No, That's true. But this was, this was their solution to a perceived problem in the field.
Yeah. Well, maybe if you
Got
guys
it into
didn't
the
fat
field
finger this
as
stuff so
a
much.
multi-chip board much faster without reducing it down to a board with many chips.
Yeah. Yeah. Understood. So no, we're not putting any coating other than, standard silkscreen, excuse, standard solder resist. I can't remember what the stuff is called. The colors, the green, the blue,
Yeah.
whatever.
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. So, and as Joe alluded to earlier, one of the other things that we literally just talked about this past Wednesday is Joe's working on a 3D printable enclosure for the expansion board. So it's not quite a 2060, but it's it's getting closer.
That board has a choice of having 2 or 4 slots, right?
That's correct.
So
Yep.
will the enclosure be for both of them?
The enclosure, not Joe, Jeff is redesigning the expansion board. And so I think, if I recall correctly, that redesigned version is going to have 3 slots. And, and it'd also be a little closer to the physically closer to the 2068, because right now there's a fairly big gap between the 2068 and the first slot, and this will move it forward so that it looks more like it was designed for the 2068. So if you have that
Well, it
new,
was designed for the 2068.
it was designed, but yes. But if you have the new board, and then the enclosures for your TS-Pico and your PicoVideo, it'll look like a little bit more like an official product. So Randy Kindig will be very happy because he loves enclosures. As a matter of fact, that's almost the sole reason that I started working on this this 8 ROM expansion cartridge, is because Randy wants a enclosure on his cartridge as well.
And in case people don't know who Randy Kindig is, he has a podcast called Floppy Days, and he's also a co-host of the Antic Atari 8-Bit podcast.
Yeah. Randy's been, how long has he been? Randy's been doing that for years and years.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, so that's the majority of what I wanted to catch y'all up on. For Mike, I brought the Kindle, or not the Kindle, the Cradle. I'm just gonna see if I can open this up. I don't know if I have it screwed down or what. Oh no, there we go. Okay. So let me just switch cameras here for you, Mike, and turn off my okay. So let me go back to the top view. So to answer some of your questions, Mike, this thing is called the K2. That was the name of the K2 Electronics Design Corporation. So it's down here in the lower right corner. This is a very heavy metal enclosure, and it's got this crazy custom keyboard. It's like almost chiclets, but they are. I feel like they have little domes under them because there is some feedback. Okay. There are a couple of custom mapped keys like graphics and function and list, and it's got standalone arrow keys and an edit key. Just the edit is just shift 1, but it does it for you in one button. And then
Hey, David, can you highlight yourself so we can see it larger?
I'm sorry. Let me go. Yes. Where am I gotta find myself. There we go. Thank you, Tim. Okay, there we go. Let's bring it back larger. Okay. So like I said, cool custom buttons, little tiny bit of clickiness. You probably can't hear it. A decent enter key, two actual shift keys, the usual suspects of, multifunction, whatever keys, power LED, because we never know if our computer is turned on unless the TV is also turned on. On the back, this is going to be a challenge here. Let me turn it over and bring it up for you. Okay, so on the back there are two option slots. This is it's kind of inverted right now, but this is the regular CX81/1000 expansion bus. Ear mic, 9 volts, joystick port, which I believe is wired to the arrows, so 5, 6, 7, 8. And in that TV hole was a RCA cable, literally just a cheap and cheesy RCA cable. Given how expensive this thing was back in the day, that that was the simple solution. All right, so opening it up, you see that there's this expansion connector right here. I don't have a 1000 handy. These are literally ear and mic jacks. They're soldered to a spot I'll show you on the motherboard. And there should be 2 of these little metal clips here. You take your 1000 and you just plug it into that slot. The entire thing. You don't do anything to it except plug it in, and then this clip and the one that's missing from over here sort of hold it in place, right? And then there's a little cutout for the channel 3, 4, or 2, 3, whichever switch, whatever that switch was. And then you have all of this craziness inside. So there's 64K of RAM chips here. Let's see if I can get this out of the way. I don't know what this switch does because I haven't given it any testing yet. This is one of the 2 or 3, I'd have to go look at the website, potential expansion boards that you could get with this thing. This one is a parallel port, if I recall correctly. Let's look at that chip. That is a Z80PIO. It's made by, this one's made by Mostech, but it's still a Z80PIO. So that's a parallel port chip. I have no idea what the rest of this is. It has a regular voltage, supply regulator and a giant heat sink off it. These folks here, Advanced Input Devices, they manufactured keyboards like this. And so this was, clearly custom manufactured. Somebody ponied up a fair amount of money to have this crazy thing made.
So wait, David, so you mean the keyboard isn't a standard keyboard that you could just buy off the shelf? Like,
That's
and this
correct.
company just, oh,
That's-
wow.
Yeah. Well, let me take that back, because if we look at the keyboard, they're not labeled with anything. So you know what, Adam, this could be maybe not entirely custom, but semi-custom, because all this stuff that you see printed on here, that's just a sticker. I don't know if you can make out that fine line right there, and over here where it's started to peel up just a little bit. This is just a sticker. So yeah, it could possibly be a semi-standard keyboard. And these things were, they were a lot of money. I don't remember how much they were, but they were not cheap when they made them. And I have only seen 3, and I know that there's a 4th because Jack said he had one. And the serial numbers. Show the serial number. All these serial numbers are relatively low. Like, I think the highest serial number I've seen is either 1069 or 66. So I feel like they might have made 100 of these
It was very typical to start serial numbers at 1,000 or 1,001.
Exactly, exactly, and I think that that's what happened is those those serial numbers are not quite real.
Not the start for one, start for 1,000.
Yes, exactly. Right. What's more impressive? Yeah, Mike, we probably saw the same cradle a few years ago, and that's where there was pictures of it, and that's how I know about those serial numbers, because there was a picture of the serial number. So yeah, this is a crazy piece of equipment, and you would plug your you'd plug in the ear and the mic, and there's a little the power actually comes through the edge connector, but the last cable was that RF cable that plugged into the TV output of your 1000, and it was like a Radio Shack RF cable. It was crazy.
When was this available?
83, 84. Let me look. Let's see here. I'll just search for it. That'll be faster.
Or you can see the date on the chip, any chip.
Yep. 83. Oh yeah, it was $200. It was $195.
Well, RAM chips were not cheap.
I'm sorry?
The RAM chips were not cheap.
No, right. RAM was not cheap back then. I'll just share my page. I think this is the right one. Okay. So yeah, so there's some features here that I have no idea how one would use, right? Like it says that you could copy the ROM into the RAM and then turn off the ROM. I don't know how because I don't have a manual for this thing, so I have no idea what's going on there.
I think I might have a program to do that because I've been working on recovering some programs from my Byteback 64
Okay.
K add-on, and one of those was a program used to basically peek everything out of the ROM
Yeah.
and then poke it into memory, into RAM,
Yeah.
using machine code, and then you could go in and edit and update your ROM in the RAM on the RAM side, and then you flip a switch and everything's running out of RAM.
Right.
Yeah, I
Right.
have that program. I'm finishing it up.
Okay, cool.
So yeah, it was very handy for getting rid of the buggy ROM.
No, the only issue is I don't know how the keyboard or the logic can put in the port to read the keyboard, because in case of the 2068, the port is inside the SCLD.
Yeah.
And when the processor try to gain access to the IO port, maybe you have two devices in the same address when made the input command.
So it uses the expansion bus to put the keys basically in the right place. And this is not the only device that did this. There's a guy who David Stevenson, I believe, who made a new keyboard replacement for the 81-1000, and it has a little doodad that plugs into the back and a ribbon cable that goes to the keyboard itself, and maps it that way.
Is that the same as the Memotech one?
The Memotech, I suspect is the same sort of hardware. Yes.
Okay.
At its base. Yeah. I mean, it's not a difficult thing, and there were a couple articles that folks wrote, in user groups, newsletters about how to do this.
We have any circuit available for any keyboard replacement?
For any, well, maybe not any, but yeah, I can dig those up and send them out to the list. You can see how this thing plugs in. I mean, just, part of the charm is just what it does. And then the other part of the charm, of course, is that it gives you that crazy keyboard.
No,
Well, I
yeah, no,
wonder. Oh,
yeah.
go ahead.
No, sorry. No, the same thinking is for the 2068, because if you have the ability to replace the input-output port externally, not using the keyboard socket, the two original PCB connectors for the keyboard, just you are only use the expansion port. And one of the things is the Timex not have the ability of the signal for IORQGE like Spectrum has. This signal disable any input-output port inside the machine. And this signal is not available on the Timex computer.
So how does that relate to the keyboard?
No, to gain access to the port 254, for example.
Oh, well, that's a different issue.
Yeah.
I'm just looking for David's article about his keyboard on his website.
I actually don't understand what you mean, Gustavo. You're wondering about how. I don't understand what your statement meant, honestly.
Yeah.
When you put, for example, in basic line, print input 254, you gain access of the lower 5 bits of the keyboard port, okay? And depending on the row you press the key with the address, you get the bit in 0 or 1, okay? This, you scan all the rows and see what key was pressed, okay? This is a big matrix. When you get the info in the input routine, if you put another device on the bus, you have in total 2 buses, one for the SCLD information and another for your external device. That is the issue, how you can disable the internal SCLD port.
So
that is my main
I
question.
think you're overthinking it, Gustavo. Let me just share real quick, by the way. I want to show what a more recent implementation of this kind of thing looks like. So this is I want to say David Stevenson, but I'll double check. This is his, what he calls his ZX. It started out as ZX keyboard, ZX81 keyboard adventure. And his goal was to make an external keyboard for his 81. And the little circuit that you see plugged into the back of the 81 is a couple of, I think it's buffer chips off. I don't know off the top of my head. And then this ribbon cable. And there's actually a Arduino Nano that is on the keyboard module itself. And the Arduino does the scanning of the keyboard and maps the right signals to the ribbon cable, and then those are decoded on the little circuit board and presented to the 81 as if it were just the keyboard physically attached to the 81 that you plug into the tiny little connectors. For the 2068, Gustavo, there's a similar device. Oh shoot, that's not what I want. Here we go. He did a keyboard interface for his, oh shoot, I don't have the picture. Okay. He did a keyboard interface for and a bunch of other things for the 2068. Let me just make this bigger. And as Tim says, spotlight myself. Okay. And so this is a terrible photo, but you can at least see that there's a little expansion bus on the back. And one of the other things that he did was, I think, oh yeah, that's right. His keyboard plugs into the cartridge slot. And so because of that, he made a little adapter for the expansion bus that lets you plug in cartridges on the expansion bus. I have not seen one of these things, in the real world.
What was the price? I missed the price there.
Oh yeah, let's see what the price was. What was his price for his keyboard interface? Was
70
$40.
bucks.
That's not terrible.
Hmm.
I don't know what year this was exactly. But yeah, he talks about how this, plugs into the cartridge. The whole system was $70. This part is, this is the part that I find really amusing, is that, a little adapter so you can plug your cartridges into the expansion slot. So
Nice. I
Gustavo,
will investigate.
there's nothing to it in terms of, you don't have to bypass the SCLD, because the SCLD sees the expansion bus and where the keyboard is, the 2068 keyboard is plugged in as the same bus.
Okay. Could you please share the link? I will
Yeah.
investigate it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, and there's I feel like there might be another person who did a solution similar to that for a real large keyboard attached to a 2068.
Good catch.
Besides Keith, hacking up his case and sticking an ORC keyboard in.
Good catch. Thank you, David.
Yeah.
Am I crazy to think that people were using TI 99 keyboards on the 1000 because they were available at Radio Shack for cheap?
Oh yes. Yeah. There were literally at least a dozen articles written about how to do that.
Okay.
Yeah. And it was there were two TI keyboards that were available, and it was the first style where it was a physical PCB board, with the second version, the sort of whitish TI that had a Mylar keyboard, and it was harder to convert.
Yeah, that one was made for low cost.
Yeah, but that first TI keyboard was really nice. You just opened it up, you cut some connections and did a little rewiring, and boom, you were done. It was pretty cool and easy to do, like you said. Okay, I feel like I've monopolized long enough. Hey, Jim, you there?
Yeah, I know. It's back because
so you wanted to know how your stuff has been faring.
yeah, it's like
Well, so Joe has been working on the disk drive system, and
for the future use, can you explain what Jim has sent you and things like that?
I'm sorry. Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Because not everybody's watching these.
Yeah.
Well, so Jim wrote a book. Jim, you were involved in the user groups in the Northern California area?
in Bay Area. Yeah.
Bay Area. Okay. The BAZUG, which
Yeah, Zug and Timelines. Yeah.
Yeah.
East Bay's Dialogue Users Group.
And so somehow you became a popular target for people to send things to.
Well, yeah, I was approached by someone who wanted to have me write a book about the Timex Sinclair computers. And so they took care of notifying all the manufacturers of anything that wanted to get in this book to send me free stuff. So I got a lot of free stuff.
Right. Did you purchase the disk drive system, or was that one of those things that they sent you?
No, that was just sent to me.
Okay. So, and way back when, of course, as everything is with us, there was a company in New Jersey called CompUSA, not the same CompUSA as now, and they did a lot of stuff. I feel like that they were, one of the things that they did was PCB manufacturing. And they brought over this disk system that somebody in the UK had made for the ZX81 called the Fizz, F-I-Z. And probably it stood for floppy interface ZX81, be my guess. And they, they rebranded it as their own. It was like the CompUSA 101 or something. And it was this little circuit board that you plugged into the back of your 81, and you could buy a disk drive from them. I think that you could use, you could supply your own disk drive as well if you wanted to. And it had a little 2K ROM chip on it that had the operating system, and that operating system sat in the memory space on the 81, the between 8K and 16K, which was used for a lot of machine language programs. And so you could load and save from the disk drive with these, these machine language calls. Print user 12, 318 or something like that would do something. And so Jim, this book you wrote was like literally just a catalog of all of this stuff that was available at one point in time, and pretty darn exhaustive. A lot of folks participated. The Timex Sinclair Users Encyclopedia. So anyway, Joe held up his hand and said, "I'd like to work on that." Little did Joe know. Hey, Joe. Do you want to talk about your experience there a little bit?
Yeah, so I received that Fizz board and kind of looked at it carefully, realized that it was built for hard sector floppies, which is not a problem. I still have a box of those, so I probably have 100 hard sector floppies. But then when I went to read the ROM, about a third of the address lines were showing as disconnected or open. So, and that's not uncommon for ROMs of that period to basically corrode internally and lose the connection to the outside pin. So without that ROM, I'm kind of dead in the water as to how to get the thing to operate. So
Joe, I thought you were going to say, and so I just decapped it and just dumped it that way.
No, my lab isn't that good. So I did find a place in Ireland that would do that for me for just to examine it. It was $300 plus probably another $100 in shipping, and I just couldn't see that.
Did you ever see one of those wire bonders in use?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So you know how they get from a chip to the pin.
Yeah. I know if I had one or access to one of those, I would probably try it. But since I haven't taken the nice NASA high reliability soldering in many years, yeah.
So I have a question about this disk drive. Is it a unique device or it's just rare?
I think it's just rare.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't think a whole lot of them were produced, because as soon as they got that one out the door, less than a year later, it came out. It seems that they came out with a newer one that was soft sectored floppies.
Oh, the same company.
Same company, yeah.
Oh.
And then they created one a little bit later for the Spectrum, and it was also soft sectored and dual sided. The one that I had is hard sectored single sided. 35 or 40 tracks selectable. So, and you actually had to get a different ROM. The 35 track ROM was one item, and the 40 track ROM was a separate item.
You remember the company Tandem or whatever? No.
Well, Tandem made the floppy drive, but the actual interface board was that Fizz product. David, do you remember the company name?
Oh, Macronics?
Yeah, Macronics. There we go. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Yes.
And it was a UK company.
Yeah.
And I've reached out to several different boards of vintage computers, especially ZX related ones, and nobody's responded to my inquiries. So
Yeah. And this was, I mean, it came out in 82. It was $200, I think, from Macronics. Let's look and see how much the interface itself was from CompUSA. Oh yeah, it was $150. I'm gonna just put this on the screen so people can see what we're talking about. So Joe, that thing over on the right hand side, that's a floppy disk connector, and I think you had to solder your own edge connector onto this. Did it come soldered, Jim, for you? Like,
No.
or was there like a little cable?
Well, I don't know which part you mean, because the board soldered to the drive, or because it had an edge connector to my computer.
Yeah, that's what I'm looking at. I mean, like this edge connector that we're looking at here in this picture would work if you had like a little expansion bus that you could plug this thing into. Otherwise, you'd have to solder a connector into those holes or build a little cable to connect it to the 81 or 1000.
Yeah, I didn't do any soldering. I know it just plugged in. I think it might have had a ribbon cable, that
Okay, yeah,
that moved it from one to the other.
yeah, and the little black rectangle up near the top of the board, that's the ROM that Joe has not been able to recover. Yeah,
And apparently 7070, the chip.
what's that?
Single, the FDC controller is a single chip. It's a 1770.
No,
1770.
this is no, not at all. It has 2K of RAM, 2K of ROM, and a bunch of discrete TTL parts.
yeah,
It's
there's no controller on here.
Yeah, it's all done through software.
Oh, okay.
It's all done in the ROM.
Yeah, it's all bit bang.
Wow.
The Z80 does the hard work. Yeah. So, and then
Jim, can I ask you a question about the book and your experience with the company? Because I knew Jeff Stanton, and he wrote the 1983, 1984, and 1985 version of that book for the Atari. And when I went to his house in 2001, and he brought me into his garage, I mean, his garage was a 2-person garage, and it was literally nothing but Amiga stuff and Atari stuff that was just piled high from stuff that was sent to him for free. Did you have an experience like that?
Well, I don't have.
20
No,
years
I
later.
had 3 boxes. I had 3 boxes
okay.
worth of stuff, but it was pretty compact. So it was probably 100 products, something like that. I don't know. You'd have to. Yeah, but it was, and the market, the advertise. If you do this for a number of years, I'm sure that the companies get to know you better. This was the first time round, and of course, the book was only out for a month before they discontinued the computer, so it never really got a second edition. So but it was more than I really wanted of all that stuff. I'd take it to the user groups, and let people play with it and ask them what they thought of it. So it was good. It was great. People loved me coming in with my stuff.
And Jim, you wrote a column for Timelines.
Well, actually, yeah, I was the president of the East Bay Zilog Users Group, so I would write a monthly column in our newsletter, and occasionally the column was grabbed by Timelines. They liked. I did some assembly language classes for the GX81, and those seemed to be something that not many people talked about and were pretty popular. So they kind of cut and paste and put it in the Timelines.
Let me ask you, did you do a lot of machine language programming on the 81?
Well, I did. So yeah, I went to Stanford in 75, 76, and was at that time the Zilog was just coming out with all this stuff. And so I was an electrical engineering student for 2 years in the digital electronics lab, and I would get all this. I mean, they would just pour their, it turns out they'd bring all of their chips that didn't meet specs and give them to us electrical engineering students to play with. And I was really pissed because I did a whole project with when they first came out with their DMA chip to be able to do, automatic digital capture of data from some digital device. So I hooked it up to an old video camera and was trying to do some real-time video capture.
Oh, wow.
And the spec said it could handle up to 2 megabytes, something like that. And when I looked at it with at that time, they were great. HP was a big deal in Palo Alto, and they sent over these scopes that you could do trace scopes of what's going on the circuits. And we found out that chips were only running at 300 kilobytes per second, which kind of didn't help my project too much. But yeah, so I did a lot of Z80 coding, the 8080 coding. That was my what do you call my bailiwick.
Do you remember?
And
oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I chose not to go. I mean, I was being pulled into all these electronics companies because they wanted machine coders, and especially for the new microchips. And I didn't want to be in a technical field, so I went and got my economics degree and my master's in statistics, and left thinking that I'd never have to look at another assembly code. Yeah, I've had to write assemblers, we used to have to boot a computer from the, they used to have these punched bootable tapes, the tapes with eight columns, and you run them through. They're from the old days of teletypes.
Yeah.
And I'd have to write my own assembly language. So I love that domain. I'm a really kind of a nerdy, logical kind of person, mathematics and everything. So it was always fun to design CPUs or ALUs or whatever to build your own computer. The year after I left Stanford, I kind of kicked myself because HP donated $6 million. You could have your own chips manufactured if you design them as a student.
Wow.
They would manufacture your chips. So you could actually get a prototype chip as part of your education, which was, I just go, God, I would have loved to have some. I was always a weird guy. I was always the person who was interested in social science. So the electrical engineers would ask me for crazy ideas. That I never found electrical engineers. It's funny because they would think of these wonderful, complex electronic projects, and I'd say, but what do people need? So I was working. The video feed was to build an optical character recognition.
Okay.
From a video feed. So anyway, there you go.
So the question I wanted to ask you about programming on the 81 or 1000 was, do you remember what tools you used to program on it? I mean, did you program on the computer itself, or did you use something else and then somehow magically transfer it to the computer?
Yeah, you could do it either way, but yeah, we had a lab where you could write assembly code, your assembly language, and it would convert it into the bit version. Then you burn a PROM and put it in, and run the computer off the PROM, an EEPROM. We used a lot of UV EEPROMs, reprogrammable read-only memory.
Right. Okay.
And the question is, are you using CPM as a base to development?
No, CPM was just kind of, I'm trying to remember
It
when,
was just getting started then.
yeah, it was just getting started. It's because microcomputers were such a new deal. I mean, there were the Altair was out on I think there was a 4040 chip first, and then there was the 8080.
Yeah.
But there were not a lot of operating systems or generic. I mean, it was all new stuff. So you didn't have, I know CPM was coming out. I think that came out of Santa Cruz, didn't it, or something?
Yeah.
But it was kind of just being introduced, and everybody wrote their own operating systems in those days. I mean,
No, before that, I remember use the Intel operating system. It's not a formal operating system. It's a small kit with the inside routine for save or write memory or disk inside the development board. That is the most advanced feature you know during those days before the CPM exists. Only the Intel.
Do you mean like it was like
tools.
a machine language monitor built into ROM, like on the Apple?
Yes,
Yeah, that sort of thing. Yeah.
exactly.
It sounds like, Jim, you were probably using mini computers.
yeah, we had, I'm trying to think. I know that there were a couple of computer companies just coming out. I can't even remember.
Well, HP.
But the exciting thing for me was we finally got an addressable. The ADM3A was an addressable CRT terminal, so that you could actually do things on the screen other than serial input. It's like you could have the cursor bop around the screen. So I immediately wrote a little assembly program that would put a road on the screen and have it disappear into the horizon. You'd have to keep the cursor on the road, kind of thing. So
my first work was on LSI, or this terminal manufacturer.
yeah,
Here
that
in
time.
Argentina. Yes, I use an IDM5 or ADM3 or 3A. It's a big terminal with all TTL chips inside.
Right. Okay.
Yes, I remember that. Oh, nice.
Yeah.
And so, Jim, actually, you had a massive collection of software for the 1000 in particular, from your book, right? And I'd say about 2 or 3 weeks, 2 or 3 months ago, rather, I've started to work on bringing in those tapes. I have actually something called Shark's Treasure 16K sitting on my desk. Soft sync.
Don't leave us in suspense. Let me see it.
Oh, all right.
Oh, I can't see.
And there's a packaging for it. I don't know what I did with the packaging. It's probably sitting in a drawer. But this one's been a little problematic. That's why it's sitting on my desk.
Yeah.
Well, recovery. I don't know if you've seen any of the episodes or meetings we've had. Recovering software for the 2068 is, by comparison, really easy. I don't know how to explain it, except that the tapes themselves were fairly physically robust for whatever folks used. And when I archive a 2068 tape, I actually ended up using the Timex 2020 cassette player, because it's turned out to be the most reliable one for me. And so I just record into my computer in Audacity, from the recorder, and I export that as a WAV file. And then I have a choice of something called TZX Tools, which was written for the Spectrum, but works just fine for the 2068. There's an emulator called Fuse, and then Fuse also has some command line utilities that are the equivalent. And I'll run it through both of the command line things and see, if it turns out. And if not, I'll run it through Fuse, and 99 times out of 100, I'm able to recover. It's rare that I'm not able to recover 2068 tape. Joe and I can both attest to the recovery process for a 1000 tape.
Yeah, I think, in those days, they were using cassette tapes, audio cassette tapes, and then they
Yes.
developed digital, specifically some magnetic media for digital
Yeah.
tapes. And they are physically different so that they hold a signal better.
Well, and it's the I don't remember what the format is for the 2068, but for the 1000, the signal format is I don't know, it's a little loosier and goosier.
Mhm.
You get some spurious spikes, and Joe gave us a little demo of that a few months back. But there's a really nice tool that somebody wrote for archiving these things, and it gives you this really cool graphical view, and you can see, here's a section that should be 4 spikes,
Right.
here's a section that should be 9 spikes, right? The difference between a 0 and a 1, and you can just like click a button and say that thing is that's a 4, and that's a 9, and it squares it up for you. It's really nice. And then the other cool thing that tool does is generate a listing. If it can tell, it'll you can look at the listing on the screen. It's really nifty. But it's a little slow. It's a
Will
little
it
slow
take,
going.
will it, sometimes if you have 2 tapes, the random noise is just that, it's randomly distributed, so you can average the 2 and come up with a much better tape.
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah, because there are some cases where I have more than one copy of a tape. Yeah.
Yeah.
By the
So
time Sinclair got to the QL, he was using BASF videotape.
was that in
Yeah.
the cartridges? Interesting. Cool.
What is that? That's a company, or what's the deal with that?
BASF.
Yeah, that was a company.
BASF, B as in boy, right?
Yeah,
BASF.
weren't they German? They used to have a lot of ads for what they did.
Yeah.
Were
they're
they
still
low
around.
quality or high quality? With Sinclair, you never know. It's
Oh no,
like,
real high quality. BASF
oh, okay.
is a chemistry company, or chemical company rather. And one
Well,
of
it
the
was a
things,
video. It was a
Yeah,
videotape.
yeah,
they
one of
made-
the
They
things
did-
that they produced was tape.
Yeah, they made
Yeah.
magnetic tape, but
Yep.
like anybody who makes magnetic tape, there's good parts of the tape, and
Right.
then there's the cheaper, then there's the edges, and you sell those off to people like, say, Sinclair.
That's terrible, Ryan. You're gonna go to the hot place.
I mean, that's what I forget which brand, but probably like wherever Radio Shack got some of their tapes. That's the way that was. Picture like a big paper roll,
Mhm.
and that gets sliced up, but stuff on the edges apparently is not as good. And then rather than throw it out, well, if someone's going to give me money for it, why not?
We'll sell it to Radio Shack. Yeah, those cheap Radio Shack tapes, not the really cool ones that look like miniature reel to reels. Hey Ryan, since you're no longer at the car show, you want to talk about your program?
Well, hey, before we
Oh,
go
go ahead.
there, could
Yeah.
you just answer a question, David?
Yeah.
So the tapes that I gave you, the success rate's very low or 0 or
No,
what?
very high. Yeah. It just
Oh,
takes a little
but
bit longer
because
because it's not the tape. It's the way that the Spectrum the Sinclair saves programs.
and how does it take longer? Is it because you visually have to decide if it's
Yeah, because I
what
have
the
to
signal
go
is,
and bring it up in the editor and pick off some of those bad signals.
and you don't have there aren't any averaging algorithms that'll smooth those out so that you don't have to, because if it's just
there are
random noise.
No, it's not that it's random. It's so it's the zero, it's the transition, and it's the zero crossing point. And I feel like that it comes down to the output from the ULA and what RF low pass filter that it has to go through, right? And there's when it goes into a 4 peak, the I think it's the 0, when it goes into the 4 peak thing, that initial swing will cross the 0 and will sometimes get picked up, And so you'll see five peaks. The software will see
Mhm.
5 peaks, and you have to say, no, this is actually 4.
Hmm.
And it's not the tapes themselves. It's just that's what that's what the
We need a
hardware did.
ZX81 filter.
Exactly. That's exactly what
Well, there are the filters in Audacity, like low pass filters and things like
yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, but when
the
we
problem
know
with-
that the signal's one or the other, it's like you could get a really accurate filter because the choices aren't
Well,
that great.
and one of the things that I'm seriously considering is pulling out one of those Winky boards and trying it. Because the Winky board solved, you may remember this, it was sometimes difficult to load a tape into the 1000, right? Or the 81. And that Winky board just had a couple of LEDs on it that would tell you if you were in the right window, but also those LEDs, I think, kind of squared up the signal a little bit in a way that that the tape player did not.
Where are you storing off these images on archive.org?
I am.
Or
Yeah. As a matter
are
of
those?
fact.
So I saw some of those. So, and I was looking at the. You have to translate them into WAV files. I got the program to do that. So, but I haven't really looked at them yet. If you could send me the name of one that's particularly bad, I'd be happy to take a look at it to see if I have any ideas that might help.
Okay. Yeah, I'll do that. I have a pile of problem tapes.
Okay, there you go.
Quite literally, I have a pile of problem tapes.
All right. Well, point me to one of those files with the problem tape. Do you upload the ones that have problems?
No, so it would be a WAV file, and I'll have I can make that WAV file available to you.
Okay.
Look, it looks like Rich, are you holding up like a Winky board? Or
This is a Winky keyboard.
Oh, look at that. But you added a battery power pack to it. Interesting.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. The 3.
Yeah. Very cool.
Yeah.
I've got a quick question for Jim. Are you still in the
No.
East Bay?
No, I'm in North Carolina now.
It's good.
Okay, just curious. Thanks.
Jim, do you remember Andy Radesky?
Not ringing bells, but
he edited the timelines. Tim, you know better than I do.
I think Andy got involved late 80s, like 86, 87, 88 time frame. Probably like 87 time frame. I think, Jim, you were early 80s.
I was, yeah.
Because by the time I joined the Peninsula group in like 86, 85, 86, I think you were kind of out of it because I don't remember seeing much of your stuff in timelines, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, no, I had a real job then.
Oh, those
Actually, I wrote that book. I had a job. I was working at Crocker Bank. I was a portfolio analyst, and I had. It was interesting because I took a week of vacation off and wrote all the entries, my entries in 1 week, a 40-hour work week, and I got a $5,000 advance. So I was like happy as a clam.
I guess that means like you must have been sharing some of those entries with some of the other books in the series.
Yeah, Gary Phillips wrote the first one. I think it was for the IBM PC Users Encyclopedia, and he was clever. He said, well, I'll take all the generic entries and go subcontract out specific entries with the experts in the other computer systems. And he had a whole series of user encyclopedias for all the different platforms.
Oh, that's cool. A week, huh? Okay, I think I'm slacking. I'm gonna try this. I'm gonna try to take a week off and write a book. Hey, so Ryan, are you there? I can see you moving, Ryan. I just can't hear you make.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay. I wasn't sure if you were.
Sounded like someone had a open mic that was
Yeah,
looping
an
back.
echo.
Yeah, I think I'm muted. Yeah. So you said the other day that you were making some progress on your program that converts 1,000 tapes into files that can be put on a 1510 cartridge equivalent.
Yeah. So basically, what I'd done originally was just sort of sort of unify all the different loaders that were seen in the existing ROMs, the 4 existing ROMs, and just make that generic. So then it would read a P file, take the program, and then variables if you wanted, and put those into a ROM image with that modified loader. And that was working pretty good, except then some programs wouldn't work with that. And notably, some examples like ViewCalc and related ones would do a checksum of the system variables, which would not work because that loader didn't set those variables up. Well, it couldn't really, because it would have to have loaded them from the P file. So I just made a loader that says, well, just load it like the tape does. Load the variables, program display file, and the system variables, program display file, and variables, and just put it all there. And the idea was sound, and of course it generally takes like another 3/4 K of memory because of the display file is usually padded out. But I just missed a few things that the other loader was doing that I didn't think I needed to do, and it turned out, well, no, you do have to do those, because largely those were variables that were outside the system variables that needed setting and things like that. And so once I figured all that out, got that going, then it started working in the 81 emulator. So I've uploaded the ROMs that use that loader for Carl to test by putting on some real ROMs, but I think they should work now.
Very cool.
And so that'll let you, put. So even ones like that one, like Impact, that would work. It would work with the original loader if I adjusted the auto start line, because it's got a weird malformed P file in a technical sense, but the tape-like loader then just handles it fine on its own. And so the reason it was having a problem was it would work if you did it on a TS-1000 or a ZX81, and it would work because those you would have to boot the computer up to a command line first, then run the loader routine manually. And so once you booted to command line, all the basic system had already been set up completely. I don't know, 1500, it jumps straight to the loader. It doesn't set up the basic system completely. And so that was the couple of the things the other loader was doing, and I missed a few of those things. Initially, I guess I thought I didn't need to do them. And so on a if you ran the ROM worked fine, except when you ran on a 1500, then it would fail because those, like there's a byte you set at the top of RAM. And that, I don't know, I just missed that. And then of course later on it was obvious, like, well, duh, you'll need to set that. So basically, the mystery one is I tried to clean up the code and realized there was only one instruction left using the IY index register, because they loaded it with 4000 hex and they were using offsets to go set some of the system variables. But now we had one instruction left that was doing that. I said, well, I don't need to set the IY register. I'll just load it directly. Well, it turns out apparently something needs that IY register set, or something else does. I don't know what, but it's just kind of interesting. It would fail if I removed it.
Yeah.
So,
Well, if it ain't
you know,
broke, don't fix it, Ryan. You know.
so yeah.
Or don't ignore it, apparently, is the lesson.
Yeah.
So that sort of, I think, is got that good finally.
So
And
so now you got viewfile to work?
yeah, so it comes up in 81 under a TS-1500 emulation. And so I think that, and then also a couple of other ones. What I'll still have to do yet is, I just don't think, I think it's pretty specialized, but you know, Carl had given me, I think it was like 2 or 3 of the Quicksilver games, which use Quicksilver special hardware, and which probably no one really has, except that you can emulate it in 81. So you have to turn on all those to be able to do it. But from the ROM cartridge, the problem is the tape file loads another tape file. And with P files, that happens with the file system. So if one loads the other, the emulator will look for a P file with that same name, and that just can't happen in the ROM loader. So I can try
Ryan,
to make
was that a form
a
of
model.
copy protection? Is that what that was?
No, it's just the first one would set up the hardware and then load the program. So it didn't have the setup stuff in memory. It just set it up, initialized it, and then load the next program. So the next program didn't. You could have put them together, but it would have been a bigger program. And so the other program could be a little bit larger. But I might be able to make a loader that, through some trickery, that can load a subsequent program. Especially now that I've fixed the current one. I just have to have a way of knowing that I've already loaded it once, so that when it gets called again, it skips to the second program that's stored in the ROM and loads that. So should be able to do it, but that may be a while, because I don't know if there's going to be much call for that, unless Carl really gets anxious for to run those. So yeah, so that kind of,
But
think,
I guess I'm not confused, but like if you run those on a real 1000 with a 16K RAM expansion from a TAP file that's been converted to a WAV file, they will load, right? Like without not converting it to a cartridge.
which ones?
Like the ones by
Quicks-
Bug Bite or Bug Bat.
Or Quicksilver?
Quicksilver, sorry.
Quicksilver. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I guess I misunderstood when you were first starting talking about it. I thought you said it
No,
required
all
a
it
piece of
is,
hardware.
well, those particular games, the first program the games use specialized, or can use, I guess you don't have to have it. You just don't see some of the special stuff, or in one case it's sound.
I
And
see. So they use expansion hardware if it's available.
yeah, they sold
Okay.
a sound option and a high res graphics or whatever, programmable characters, and these games use those.
I see.
And the way they load it is they have a small program that initializes the hardware, and at the end of it, it just says load and the name of the next program. So an emulator on a real one, well, the next program will just be next on the tape. And the emulator looks at the name that was requested and looks for a P file with that name, and will load that. So you have to kind of know that and stick those together, which was odd because the archive I got, the names were totally mismatched. But then a P file can only store, because a P file only stores one program. And so that, then the problem comes in that whether the P file stores one program or not, the way this ROM stuff loads, you load the one program and it goes into that program. Well, that program is going to execute that load command and it's going to go back out to the tape to do it. So one, you'd have to take the program and modify the load command to be a rand user call. Okay. And resave that. And then use that program to put on the ROM so that when it ran, it doesn't do a load, it does a rand user call to load the second ROM program, load the second program from ROM. Is how it'd have to work. So it's just so barring stuff like that, I should now be able to put most things in a P file onto the ROM cartridges.
And so speaking of that, you can probably see that I have Johan, I think we learned how to pronounce his name in the last meeting. Kuhlman?
I think it was
right,
Kuhlman.
So he wrote this book called 81 High-Res Games for the 1K ZX81, which kind of frustratingly only describes the games. They're not actually listings in here.
Yeah, that's a weird book. I got it and I couldn't believe that's what it did. I was like,
Right.
what?
It's like just the help file for the game, right? For the
Yeah, it's
so
odd.
he set a challenge for himself to write these 81 games. And then he wrote
It took him a week.
Right.
It took him a week.
40 hours.
And then he wrote this other one about coding for 1K. This one was more recent. And so the reason I mentioned this is because he's very active on the Sinclair ZX World forum. And there is a thread on this forum. Let's go to the top of the screen right. It's called New ZX81 Games. It's up to 385 posts, some of which are, the sort of chattiness about this stuff. Here's a couple recent ones that he did, something called World Cafe, where you have to get people to their seats. I'm not entirely sure what that means, other than, I assume guiding someone to whatever. And then this other one called Train Spotter, which actually I feel like I've seen a variation on this or another version of this in some other platform. And each of these keys, is like a railroad junction, right? And you press the key and it switches the thing, and you have to guide the train. And he says it's a flashing spot. It's hard to tell what a flashing spot is in just a still image, to the designated junction. And
well, David, don't leave that page yet. I think it's funny how it says manual and it's like 5 sentences long,
It does say that.
Yeah.
Manual. Well, he can put it in the book. So these are things that since these are only 1K, these would easily fit on the cartridge ROMs that Carl and Ryan are working on. The other thing I wanted to show you was from
well, David, before you continue from here,
go ahead.
Could you show us the book again, the 81, because they're all high-res games, if I remember.
Oh yeah,
right?
that's right. High res.
Yeah,
that's right.
They're not just regular normal 1K games.
Let me.
Every single one of them has its own setup, so it can display in a high res.
Yeah,
which is,
and that's a big challenge with 1K of RAM, because you have the video screen can take up to, I think it's 762 characters or something like that. And oh, hey, look at this, Jim. Let me see if I can.
Oh.
Does this look familiar, Jim?
I recognize that.
Clearly, he stole the idea from you.
No, mine was better.
Yeah. So, what does this say? This is a board game from somewhere in Germany. Okay. And long jump, and you can see, that there's clearly, some character redefinition going on here in order to make these things possible. All of these games, by the way, you can download them from Sinclair ZX World. and hopefully, you know, it'll last a long time. Here's Johan. The other thing that I wanted to show y'all is Jack Boatwright, who was active for a very long time in the Timex Sinclair community. Jack was involved in this massive rescue of hardware from hardware, software stuff, etc., from a guy named Rod Gowan, who had a business selling stuff to us, you know, Sinclair nuts. And also Jack got a bunch of stuff from Eric Johnson. And I've mentioned Eric in the past. The short version is that Eric had a relative who worked at Timex Middlebury, and when Timex Middlebury shut down, his relative said, "Hey, you want some stuff?" And Eric's, like the smart person that he was, Eric said, "Oh, yes, I do." And you know, inherited it sounded like a garage full of stuff. And it sort of, you know, has made its way into various parts of the world. Neil Cohen got some stuff from Eric, and Neil sent it to me a few years back. Jack got a bunch of stuff from Eric, and Jack had sent me a bunch of stuff a few weeks ago. And this was in the stuff that Jack sent a few weeks back. This is one of the boards that was developed as part of, you know, the process of making the 2068. And down here in the lower right hand corner, there's this
David, highlight yourself again, please.
God, thank you, Tim. How come you're not doing this, Adam?
Because to me, you are. I can see you because you're talking. So I think
Oh,
Tim has it on the wrong setting or a
maybe
different
oh,
setting.
okay.
No, that's
Yeah.
cool. All right.
Yeah.
So down here in the lower right hand corner is this serial number, and 335 is the sort of the parent number for the 2068. The 1000 has a different number. I can't remember exactly what it is. I think it's 330. I don't know what 850001 represents, but 02, I think, is an iteration of this particular circuit design. And in the 2068s that you know, made it into our homes, this number is either 03A or 03D. Those are the two major variants I've seen. So there's something wrong, you know, with this one that didn't you know, didn't turn into the real product. And one of the things that is immediately obvious to me is it's the daughter board that we have on our 2068s goes right here. Okay, it doesn't plug into this socket or this socket. There's a space right here on the production board where that thing plugs in. And so clearly there was some, you know, rework after this thing that led to, you know, the next iteration and figuring out, oh, we need to put this thing over here, and we need to put a whole bunch of jumpers. And if you've ever looked inside your 2068, you'll see a bunch of jumpers, big jumpers, to different spots. Anyway, it's really cool. This thing has never been soldered. I mean, there's some solder on the lands for the SCLD, and so they might have started to work on it, but this is, you can tell just by looking at the backside that no through-hole components have ever been put on it. And in working with Joao from the Load CX Museum, one of the things that we picked up on with the 1500 boards is that there is this code from whoever made these boards. It's Astro something, and there's
Astrocade.
Astrocade, absolutely. There's this little code right here. I'm going to tilt it. There we go. This one says AS 8326. So this was made in the 26th week of 1983, which is kind of late in the process. for developing the the 2068 for release, because it finally made it into the stores in November and December, depending upon where you were, of 1983. So it tells you a little bit about just how intense and how how much iteration has to happen in that manufacturing process. It's really kind of cool. Just little things you can learn just by looking at one circuit board.
Thinking of that time frame, David, it reminds me that we were just a little while ago, you were talking about the cradle for the 1000, which came out not too long or around the same time as the 2068. So
yeah,
kind of interesting
exactly.
there.
Yeah, folks were developing all sorts of. I'll remove my spotlight.
Well, I saw 3 versions of the 1500 board.
I'm sorry, what's that, Mike?
I said I saw 3 versions of the PC board for the 1500.
Oh my God, Mike, there are so many versions of.
Because when I was putting the XIVID, what do you call it, video board in, on one, when you lift the metal cover up where the RF is for your
Yes.
channel 2 and 3, one had transistors and some resistors and coils. The other one had an IC chip in it.
Yeah, right. And that was supposed to be a reduced cost, improved version, and clearly even in the short lifespan of the 1500, they figured out something that they wanted to improve it. And Mike, I don't know if you watched those videos that Joao and I did about the 1500. We just brought stuff to the table and talked about it, and I think we ended up making 5 or 6 videos, and we showed in those videos, I feel like 7 or 8 variations of the 1500 board. It went from like what you said.
One of the users group, I forget which one it is, I posted 3 pictures of the 3 different boards because I bought a 1500 used and that didn't work. I tried another one, it didn't work. The third one worked, but the keyboard wasn't working right. So what I did with that one, I replaced the keyboard membrane. I got it from Sell My Retro in England.
Yeah.
And the other one, I put the video card in, and then the only thing else I did, I hooked it up to my LCD TV.
Very cool.
And
Mike,
and there's also one on one of the groups I was belong with, the Timex. I have a ZX81 playing in the background. I'll have to send it to you.
Yeah. And Mike, your story of those boards, it almost sounds like it was a castle built in a swamp.
Yeah, well.
What the hell does that mean?
We built the castle in the swamp and it fell down. We built the second castle in the swamp and it fell down. But the third castle.
They told me I was daft to build a castle in a swamp.
Monty
I'm familiar with what that is. I'm like
Monty Python and the Holy Grail.
Oh, I don't remember that part. And I've seen the movie several times. That's funny.
How could you
The
not
scene
remember?
of the huge tracts of land.
Exactly. Right. How could you not
Son,
remember?
soon all this will be yours. What, the curtains? No.
These huge tracts of land.
Huge tracts of land.
Oh. Yeah. So apparently Mike has or not Mike, Jack has sent me 3 more boxes. God knows what's going to be in them. Actually I have a whole bunch of JLO John Oliger expansions that were for the 1000 that Jack sent, including an expansion board that I think has, I don't know, 7 or 8 slots in it. It's about 10 inches long. Imagine this board sticking out of the back of your 1000.
So, these expansions, I know that they were made and you had to make your own software to take advantage of them.
Yeah.
But was there ever any like classifieds or anything of people who sold software that they'd made for these expansion buses? Like, anything that took advantage of 64K for the 1000, for instance?
There was some software that took advantage of the 64K.
And they all didn't work the same, right? They didn't all access
No,
the same.
all the 64Ks worked roughly the same. I mean, the real issue was there's that 8 to 16K region, and what you did with that. Most of them would let you map in RAM into that spot. And then the other real issue was that the ROM, the basic ROM takes up the first 8K in the memory allocation. And so, what Joe said earlier on about being able to, and the Cradle soft documentation claimed that you copy the basic ROM into RAM and then flip some sort of switch, and then you're working, in a machine that is literally at that point all 64K of RAM. But before you did that, you were working with a machine that was at most 56K of RAM, even though it had 64K worth of RAM chips in it. There was a couple programs that actually took advantage of the 64K, but I mean, you can imagine, Adam, that the audience for those is pretty small.
Sure, of course. That's why I was even curious if anything existed.
Self-limiting.
Yeah, the other problem was the video file couldn't straddle the 32K boundary.
Yeah.
And you could throw data up in the upper high memory but not run machine code from there. Something about the ROM was ghosted there because of the incomplete decoding.
Memory, yep.
Yeah, and the video relied on that ghost to be there. Yeah, there were a lot of issues with the way the memory was decoded on the ZX81.
Yeah.
Oh, and another big problem is the time consumption to fill this RAM with the program. How many time you need?
Yeah, right.
To
I mean, you needed
64K of data in CX81 or TS-1000.
Right, loading a 16K program took you what, like 5-7 minutes or something like that.
Multiply by 4.
Right. I mean, you could go out and have a whole life and come back and it wouldn't be done loading.
And at the end you receive an error tape loading.
That's right.
No, you didn't get anything back. The K cursor just came back. It didn't go 0/0. It just got the K cursor back.
Yeah, you just,
if it had one bit bad, it was dead. That's it.
Wasn't that about the equivalent of 300 baud?
It was about 300 baud.
Approximately, yeah.
Man, the stuff we put up.
That was the old modem rate.
Speaking of 300 baud, yesterday I went through all these boxes. In fact, I've got all these 3 big boxes looking for my 300 baud interface for my Astrocade, because something was archived, and before I can upload it to my website, I have to make sure that it was archived properly. And I was like, oh my gosh, how long is this going to take to load this like 8-line program? It took like a minute and a half. It was like, maybe it was more like 20 lines, but.
And now we call to the internet company. Hey, why the modem is not? I have a problem with the load. I cannot see the movie. What happened with the internet connection? Blah blah blah. Remember?
I don't know if we have time, but I wanted to ask Tim a question. Tim, you there? Can you hear me?
No, I can't hear you at all.
Okay, well, never mind then. So you uploaded 2 games that you converted for the 2068, Area 51, and I forgot what the other one was, but I haven't had a chance to try them. But where did you get the code for that, and how'd that go?
So the guy named Jonathan Caldfield, 1 second here, Caldwell, writes these games, and he also posts them online along with the source code. So I got hold of the source code. It's all in assembly. I'm not sure what assembler is written for, but it's close to what I use, close enough to use with Pasmo. So my first thing is I compile it or assemble it with Pasmo for the Spectrum, and then test it. If it works, I know that it's going to work in general. So that's my control, so to speak.
Sure.
Then I just go through the source code looking for any calls or jumps to the ROM. And I've got a little table, a spreadsheet where I'm like, okay, if it's this value in the Spectrum, it's this value in the 2068, and just replace it. I think he used at most 4 different ROM calls in both programs. So just going through one at a time and chugging through it all. And then I think one of them I had to make some changes because Pasmo didn't like it. But then I just compiled it, and luckily it all worked.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Has anyone here tried these ROMs or these tape files that you uploaded? I haven't tried them, but I do want to try one. Anyone?
Not
I'll
yet.
take that as everyone.
Everyone has played them so much that they don't even want to talk about it. So Tim, I didn't even realize that those were assembly programs. I, for some reason foolishly jumped to the conclusion they were basic programs.
No,
Wow.
pure assembly. I mean, basic in general should work just across the board. There
Yeah.
might be some changes in the resolution of graphics, or your circle might be more of an oval, but for assembly, that's where you've got the ROM differences. So that's what I've been kind of focused on porting. But the basics should just work right across, unless they're making ROM calls.
Yeah.
But they should really in basic.
Yeah, I
So-
noticed that Area 51 when I watched the video of it on YouTube, and it's it has more than just a standard number of characters across. So it seems like to be using a high res mode or something like that, because it's a text adventure with pictures, right?
No, Area 51 is a platform game.
Oh, it's the other one then, Turbomania maybe?
That's more like a Pac-Man clone.
What the hell did I look? I looked at something called Area 51 that was a text adventure video. Well, never mind then.
You must saw the wrong one. Yeah.
Right.
Interesting. Okay. I want to show you one last thing because I mentioned
Well, thank you, Tim.
No problem.
You had asked Adam, and what is new on the Timex Sinclair website. Gotta find my window again. All right. And so I mentioned that Jack had sent a bunch of stuff in the groups.io, and I was working on on archiving it. And I started with oh yes, right. I started with 3 tapes from the Sinclair user group from Endicott area, Endicott, New York. It was called Sincus, Sincus. And this is the user group that Wes Brzezowski was in. And they were pretty active. I'm gonna see if I can find the webpage for it. Did a lot of interesting things. They have a lot of their newsletters online. The Sincus news, yeah. And like most user groups, they had a tape library, but they also exchanged their tape library with other folks. And so Jack had three tapes from them. He also had a bunch of tapes from Paul. Paul, you remember those ISTUG PDL public domain library tapes you assembled way back in the day?
Yeah.
Yeah. Jack has, I don't know, 4 or 5 tapes. Each one, is like one of the numbers. And so I have been working on that. Let me just go back to, here we go. And so a bunch of stuff has come through there. I'm just trying to find, here we go. Here we go. This is the Sincus tape I was thinking of. Right. Ton of video games, and a bunch of these are games that user group members wrote. And so what I've been doing is 2 things. Not just archiving it so you can get to it. I'm gonna go to this one here. I think this Lander, but which program is this? This is the tools that come with Fuse. Has a little bit of code that will take a tap file and spit out the listing. And so I've been putting the listings on the page. And if it uses 2068 specific commands, and that would be the on, error, sound, free, and another one that's escaping me. Stick. There we go. Yeah, stick is the other one. It actually
And
puts
delete.
Delete. Is delete? Maybe, yes. It outputs the Spectrum version, because this program's written to convert tapes to Spectrum versions. And I can see that this particular lunar lander program expects to use the joystick, and on the Spectrum, the stick command is a pipe. So I have to go back and touch this up, look for those things. But for the most part, it spits out a decent listing. So you can at least look at the program that somebody wrote. And then I'm also working. I don't think I don't think
So I don't know how other users feel about this or people participating today, but and I think the classic computing community, for me, one of the neatest parts is looking at these public domain programs, because they were written by people in the users group, and they would often, use them a basis of like creative computing, those books that came out in the 70s and early 80s to make these programs. But sometimes they would, add little bits of graphics here and there, and these were non-programmers, programming. And sometimes you get some weird programs out of that. Like a lot of these seem like, we got concentration and cricket and stuff like that. But there's sometimes you come across as, what the hell were they thinking? That's awesome. I love it.
Exactly. And then, there's the classic Star Trek. If you're, like you're saying, Adam, if you're a person that, read creative computing and you bought the big book of programs, Star Trek was in it. And so, these three guys, Don, Mike, and James, worked together to convert that to run on the 2068. And you can see that they changed the display, right? So you can actually get a little, what's that? The
Enterprise?
Thank you.
What the? You're disbanded.
Right there.
You're out of the group.
the USS Enterprise by the NC 1701, right? So I'm going to send a message out which sort of captures all of this updates that have happened. But what's really cool is about these tapes is that a lot of programs that I have seen in user group newsletters are turning up on these tapes, as the types people have typed them in. So it's really awesome. And so I'm attaching those, and if you want to play some janky little program that somebody wrote back in 1983, that's going to be
so David, when you're archiving those and you have the whole tape, does it automatically split it up into different files, or you have to split them apart in a wave editor? What do you have to do?
So like I said, I have these command line utilities, and they sometimes work, and then there's the times when they don't work. And so what I do is I bring up Fuse and I load the wave file in Fuse, and you can browse theoretically the contents of the tape in Fuse, but it just shows you that it's like a 17 megabyte chunk. Doesn't show you what's on the tape. So I use I'll say load quote X, because there's invariably not going to be a program called X on the tape, right? And so what Fuse does is it just goes through the tape and prints prints out the header, right? And so I get a listing of and I get an idea of the programs. Yeah.
What I do is I load up the WAV file in 2 fuses.
Okay.
One fuse, I first loaded the header utility that I posted from the user group, Fort Worth user group. And it'll give you all the numbers. So you can write those down.
Oh,
like the code addresses and links.
Yeah, that's right.
And then you progress through with the other one on the other fuse.
So I guess I can step up my game.
That way, when you load the program, you can you got if it loads the code and stuff, and you don't have to know those addresses, you'll have them. They might be in the program, but they might not either, or you might not be able to get into the program easily or whatever.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Right.
I find that works pretty well. The only thing about that utility is it reads the header and then the data block and gives you the same data for some reason. But
right.
You just do it twice and then it moves on.
So Adam, I'll load the WAV file, extract the one program I want. I have to then infuse, clear that virtual tape, save it out to the tape, save that thing to a tap file, reload the WAV file, load the next thing, and repeat.
Now here's the other hack, David. In another instance of Fuse,
okay, so 3 instances. All right, yes.
you load it in Spectrum mode
Okay.
and mount a micro drive, and then
Oh.
you can save off several of the things you got to the micro drive,
Yeah.
and the Spectrum won't care, right? It's just saving the data out.
Yeah.
I suppose there's exceptions; it might not work, but so then I'd bank up them in several MDR files, and then just go back and through those when I was done with the tape.
I knew there was.
Wouldn't have to keep reloading the tape.
Very nice. Okay, I'm gonna try this out.
Well,
Sounds
I
like
want to ask
sounds
people,
like we need a YouTube, showing how to do this
Right.
stuff.
I'm
Come
sure
on,
that there's-
Ryan. We need you to do a YouTube.
Okay.
If you
Well,
do, don't go real fast.
Yeah.
Or a document.
That way the old timers might be able to keep up.
Yes. Adam, you were going to say something.
Oh, well, I just had two quick, one question and then one statement. The statement is, it's about time to close up the meeting, but since I have a question, we're not going to close it up yet, but I guess. My question is, so we've got people here, many of who were in Timex user groups back in the 80s, and you presumably picked up a tape or two at your meetings. I mean, if you wanted to get to the 6th program on the tape, what was the best way to do that? Like, was the tape labeled with like the foot address or whatever you would call it, with where you'd find the program and you'd fast forward to it? And like, how did you find your program, quote, easily?
I just used the counter on the tape machine,
Okay.
like you said. You would have, and you learn to put your programs far enough apart that any error that you might have in where it places the tape is, you just make sure there's enough seconds of silence between them.
Okay.
yeah, I think
On my
most of the
tape-
counters though were not. There wasn't a standard, I don't think. So commonly,
I think it was.
I'd go through the tape once and then just write the counters down. Other people, they'd go through the tape and then just copy the program off to another separate tape, that kind of thing.
So
I actually used to do an audio. So I'd say the program name on tape, record it, wait then a few seconds, and then record the audio, the next one, and then what the name was.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah, people did that a lot.
I just record the name and the counter number, and then leave 20 spaces in between.
And I'm
I like
gonna
that for us, David.
Spotlight this. So
There you
can you
go.
see this?
Yeah.
This is a perfect example where somebody has recorded this program, Raiders of the Lost Tomb, and they recorded it, at their counter at 0 and at 131.
Well, what we did was we had boxes, multiple, of 1,000 tapes. Just slap a new label on it and record over.
Yeah.
What do you mean? You had like spares?
A lot.
Okay.
Oh, you mean Timex from
The Timex
tapes.
As long as you picked one that was long enough.
Right, because it was a computer tape, as it were. Yeah.
But as shown on the video there's the Radio Shack Concerts 30.
Yeah.
And so I think 15 was the shortest you can get. I remember having those type of tapes going to Radio Shack, and then you could fit multiple, you don't want to have 1,000 cassettes, you want to have a few that had multiple programs on.
Yeah.
In fact, I think I've still
Didn't Radio Shack have a special cassette tape just for computer work?
Yeah.
And then audio.
let's see if I can I'll see, I've got to show myself here if I can see this.
I'll spotlight you.
This is my original. And I actually
Dynatone.
Tape organizer.
Wow.
Did you buy the ones that had the screws in the case?
And you see how I wrote it down. Let me see if I can so you can see.
Oh.
See, that's where it's
Wow.
archiving right there, just because like it's an
I
interesting.
love that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Again, this is from 82, 83, something like that.
Wow. I love that you still have that, Tim. Both, not just the little holder and the tapes, but you have your own, your archive listing still.
There was a company that made a tape cassette stackable holder, and they had a little push-up lever, and it popped the drawer out.
Interesting.
So the
Okay.
cassette was in a drawer
Okay.
without a case.
Oh, I don't know about that. Oh, wait, did Jack join us? I see.
I didn't do that.
I know, no, but hey, Jack, I'm gonna stop your screen sharing because you're. I think maybe he was trying to share something else.
Is that Jack Boatwright?
I think so, but I don't. He doesn't have. I don't see a
Oh, he's gone.
microphone.
Possibly he
And-
joined at 2 o'clock.
And also it dropped. He dropped. Shoot. Okay. He says he has a terrible internet connection.
Yeah.
And an old computer.
Yeah, I wanted to let him know at least one website on the internet says that he's dead.
What?
Yeah, if you search for Jack Boatwright, you hit this website that says, "Oh, Jack sadly died." They point to some obituary of another Jack Boatwright.
Oh, oh my gosh.
I
You
hate it
can't
when that
find him
happens.
anymore. Yeah, I hate it when that happens.
Not dead yet.
I was
Do
going
us
to
a
tell
favor.
When are you coming back?
Maybe.
Okay, on that note, our next meeting is Monday, June 3rd, which is roughly 2 weeks from now. Yep.
So does that mean you're opening up the Wednesday meetings starting sometime after that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because I need to organize my own life.
I got you.
to handle it. And we don't record those meetings because I don't have enough time in the day or the week to handle that. Yeah, so I'll send out a notice about that at that point.
Real
Anyway.
quick before we go, I've got one last thing.
Yes.
Today is my 60th.
Whoa.
Just
You're
thought
not
I'd point that out.
Tim, I would not peg you.
60 years ago, you started programming?
Whoa.
Sort of.
Happy birthday, Tim. That's
Yeah,
awesome.
happy birthday, man.
That's awesome. Okay, so now we're one piece closer to Tim's identity.
That's right. Forget.
Social security number is no.
Thank you very much.
I actually used to print that on my checks years ago because I was required to have it at the commissary. I got tired of writing it down, so I just print on the check.
Oh my gosh. Wow. Well, that's a good thing.
But no one was worried about that. Wasn't a
Good thing
thing
nobody
back
uses
then.
checks anymore.
Well, this was back in the early 90s, so.
Wow. Wow. Well,
And we don't have an exact agenda for the next meeting, right?
Not yet. No.
Okay.
And shoot, who was I gonna? Oh, I was gonna ask Johan Coleman if he wants to join us at an upcoming Sunday meeting, and he can explain to us why he published a book, Missing Programs.
To whet your appetite.
Why did you tease us so? But yeah, I think it'd be cool to hear him talk about writing all of these teeny tiny programs to fit in 1K.
Well, he also makes all those sound demos, right, for the Spectrum? Is that him?
Does he?
Isn't that why he's called Mr. Beep? Or is that another Mr. Beep?
No. Oh, you're thinking of that 2068 demo that got sent to the groups list.
Well, there's a person. I think it's Mr. Beep, not Dr. Beep. And on his book
by
cover,
another Beep person, as it were.
There's so many beeps out there.
So many beeps out there.
It's his brother.
They're all
big beep family.
Beeps.
Is this meeting over yet? Is
and
this meeting over
Battlestar
yet?
Galactica. Okay. All right, fine. Adam, you can, you go off and enjoy the rest of your life.
Oh yeah.
Or the rest of your day. All right, gentlemen, have a
See you
good
later.
day.
Thanks for joining us, Jim.
We'll see you in 2 weeks. Thank you, Jim.
Bye.